Hello everybody and welcome back to the Two Norries podcast. I'm your host James Denner, joined by my co-host
Hi everyone,
Timmy Long. Rowan, as always, is on the decks. Hi Rowan.
Hi Rowan.
This is our first podcast being recorded in 5 weeks. We took the month of April off, which was well overdue. But you wouldn't have known because we didn't take them off really. We just worked double in March so we could take April off, you know. So I hope you appreciated the last few podcasts. This week we have a lovely lady from Cork called Sheehan.
Hello.
They talk about her experiences of alopecia. But before we get into that, do you want to just tell people who you are and where you're from and what it was like growing up for you?
So my name is Sheehan. I'm from Dunamore. My dad's from Dunamore originally. My mum is from the city. I grew up in Douglas and I went to school in Our Lady of Lourdes in Ballinlough, and I went to St Angela's Secondary School and then on to Hewitt.
What's Hewitt?
Hewitt is a private school for leaving cert. I was mad to be a pharmacist actually. And although I would have studied hard and I would have worked hard, I needed the extra push, and I was lucky I was in a position that my parents could send me to a private school.
Yeah.
So of course when I got there, then my whole I did a bit of research into pharmacy, and I looked more into it. I did a bit of work experience. I realised it wasn't for me at all. I went down to the local pharmacy and the woman said, oh yeah, come in here, and she was showing me everything. I was there for a few days and I realised they're stuck behind the counter, and I wanted to be out with the girls out in the counter, so I was like, oh, this isn't for me at all. And my mum was like, oh, all right, okay. We just sent her to private school for pharmacy. But no, it was a great opportunity. I really got to look into different career paths, and I actually ended up having lots of different options.
Where is that school?
It's up on Patrick's Hill. It's actually right next to St Angela's, really,
Oh, is
where
it?
I had gone to school. So yeah, it's up. I loved going to school in the city actually. I loved secondary school.
Do you know the boys' school up in Patrick's Hill?
Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know when I was in the man, we
Yeah.
used to go on, after school now, and we used to go on the hopping things, and went to the Vic. Remember the Vic years
Yeah.
ago? But that's where all young people used to congregate in the Vic, right? And we used to be skinny, scrawny fellas now from Gran, Knocknaheeny, Churchfield and that. And we'd be in boys on the table next to us from Christians. They were all a bit like Timmy, they were about 13. I was like, how the fuck did they get so big?
Yeah.
But they were like men in uniforms, weren't they? Men in blazers, they were all big youths.
Yeah, they're all rugby players.
Yeah.
Rugby school.
that's what I was just going to say. A lot of them are actually rugby players.
Yeah.
A lot of, like, if you look at the Munster teams and the Irish teams, a lot of those players like come through schools like that. You'd rarely see a fella coming from, I don't know.
Is it people in regular schools, they have children, but in them rugby schools they breed rugby players. Do you know what I mean? They're bred like. But we digress.
Yes.
So you went to school in Patrick's Hill.
Yeah, and then from there, so I loved that anyway, and then from there I went on to do dental nursing in UCC. I chose that in the end. I had an option between that or paediatric nursing in the UK. But you know what? I was young. I'd only just turned 18, and I was very close to my dad, and my cousin was young at the time, and I just couldn't leave. My mum was saying, "Go, it's a great opportunity," and she'd be positive that way, but I just couldn't leave. So I stuck with the dental nursing, and it was something I wanted to do for years because I had braces, and I loved the girls that were coming in and out, and I was like, I'd love to do that. But so I did that in UCC, and I absolutely loved it. And I worked for a dental nurse for years, and then my hair started to fall out about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just had to make a whole life change just to see if there was something that I could, help. And it's long hours, it's a very, very stressful job, and it's a very interesting job, and I loved it, but it is high stress, and I just had to make some life changes. So I did. That was one of the things, and it was a big leap because I did love it. So it was going to go one way or another.
Do you think the alopecia was related to the stress of your life at the time?
I did at the time. I wasn't stressed, but I had to make sure that this wasn't causing it. But looking back now, the reason I believe for my alopecia, even though no doctor will ever condone this, or I've never gotten an answer from anyone, because it is an autoimmune disease, it is spontaneous. But I was going through a lot of medical tests. I went for a smear, and then this, plateau then from there. And I went for a lot of medical tests quite close to each other. And I put it down to not being stressed over them. I was quite calm about it, but I think my body was under a lot of stress over the whole thing. And, you know, my mum would say to me, are you all right? You know, you've that again now next week. And I'd say, yeah, I'm fine. And she kind of pointed out to me, well, you couldn't be fine, you know, maybe just kind of like take it in a bit. So that's just because of the time frames, that's what I put it down to. But again, it's an autoimmune disease. It's just something that we just can't really put a finger on, basically.
It's, you know, there's, and I keep on banging on about this book, but there's a book you might enjoy, and actually, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk.
Okay.
He's a leading trauma expert, but The Body Keeps the Score is about how stress on the body impacts our health in terms of chronic illness. Now, there's certain stuff there, like there's a first link between people who've been in incestuous relationships as children, linked to that with lupus later on in life. And there's all sorts, there's, you know, neglect linked with addiction and various kind of types of abuse and neglect, that are not just that, but traumas, psychological traumas. But I'd say your body was under a lot of stress there, and maybe you weren't aware of it. But like the whole point of this book is, like, you can undergo all this stress and not be aware of it, but your body keeps the score. You know what I mean?
Yes,
you mightn't be having it in your psyche, but your body sure as hell knows what's going on. And your body remembers all that trauma. And then an autoimmune is like an overreaction, isn't it? It's an overactive immune system. So do you want to
You've said now what I'm thinking, you know, what I'm trying to explain. You've actually
exactly
said it really well.
Very, very good explanation, and that book he's on about is a very, very, very good book.
Let's get the name of that now.
It's not an easy book. It's not an easy book to read. So I got it on Audible, and I just ran to the car, and it's handier that way, you know. But you know, when it started to happen first, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had lovely long blonde hair, you know, I was getting my highlights.
Similar to this colour.
Yeah, I was a bit darker, I wasn't as blonde, but I was getting my highlights done. My best friend, Nicole, did my hair, and she was highlighting away, and she said, Chloe, there's a little patch at the back, don't panic. She said, it's really dry, you know, I thought it might just be a bit of eczema or something, and I kind of didn't panic. I felt it, and I said, oh yeah, it was about the size of a 5-cent coin at the nape of my neck. I said, oh, right, yeah, okay. I was like, yeah. Now, looking back, she says that she knew what it was, but, you know, of course, if she said, I think you've alopecia, sure, I would have flipped. So I went away anyway, and that was grand. And I looked at it then that night, and I started taking pictures of it. That's the worst thing you can do. And then I started obsessing over it. So because I was dental nursing, my hair was tied up all the time. And the obsessive thoughts started happening. Then I was saying, who saw it? You know, how many patients was I bringing down the hall and saw the back of my neck and saw this? And I thought this little patch was the end of the world. I was like, oh, I'll never be able to tie my hair up again. Like, if I'd known. So I went to the doctor anyway, and she gave me a steroid mousse. And she said, look, just put that on it, you know, to wake up the follicles. It could just be, you know, a little reaction to something, but I'll refer you to a dermatologist. So with alopecia, there are so many different types of alopecia, and we could do a whole podcast on that, but it has to be a dermatologist to diagnose it. So I'm very lucky I have private health insurance. Trying to see a dermatologist in Cork, I don't know about the rest of Ireland, is really, really difficult privately. So I was this girl in a panic. My hair was getting so much worse. And I rang all the dermatologists in Cork. You have to have a referral, and I could get one. There's months waiting lists. You'd be waiting 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And as a paying private health insurance, like the appointments are €180 for a consult. You know, it wasn't as if I was on a public list. So I was in a bit of a panic, and I kept ringing, and my dermatologist said she'd see me. So she said, yeah, come in the morning. So I waited about, in the end I only waited about a month and a half, but it had gotten a lot worse. Now I could still hide it. It was still all sort of in the back, and it was still all kind of manageable, but it was sort of getting on top of me. And I went to her, and she diagnosed it straight away. So then it became sort of a spiral where I started to panic, and I was saying, oh God, and So everything happened from there really fast. I was continuing to use the steroids.
Was the hair loss rapid? Like, did it happen
at
really
this
quickly?
point, it was fast. And then that was February 2017. And then in maybe July and August, my hair started to grow back. So, I mean, there's like 1 in 4 women will go through some type of hair loss at some point in their life. So I was really open and positive to the fact that this happened to me and now it's, you know, fine and it's going to be fixed. So I had all these lovely new baby hairs and it was lovely and healthy. And then that was fine then, September, October, November. Then at the end of November, my hair was wet. I was coming out of the shower and noticed a big, huge patch above my ear. Started looking, because I had stopped looking at my hair just to leave it alone. Started looking and I realised I had lost probably about 15% of my hair just in that one shower. So that was fine. Then I'd say 3 weeks. So the whole time I had alopecia the first time round and it had grown back, I never wore a wig. I was able to hide it and it was fine. It was very thin and it probably didn't look great, but nobody knew, nobody saw any patches. The second time it fell out the 25th of November. I spotted it and I'd say the second week in December, I couldn't leave the house. I'd lost about 85% and it got so bad. So
what was your mental state like this time?
This is what I'm getting on to now. I didn't leave the house. My mental state was, God, it was the biggest mental health challenge I ever had and I think I will ever have. It was just, you know, it was even more painful than the first time because this time I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't hide it. It was happening to me again. You know, I had gone through all those demons and I had faced it and I had overcome it and my hair grew back and it was knocking me back again only a couple of months later. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't look in the mirror because I couldn't recognize myself. I couldn't sleep. I was having these terrible night terrors that I would lose all my hair, even though I was anyway, but that I'd wake up and be completely shiny bald. That's all that I was dreaming of. That's who I was picturing in my dreams. And it was just really, really bad. I saw the doctor, you know, and they said, you know, try and relax, you know, and then of course everyone says to you, don't stress. So I was up to 90. I was a young girl in my early 20s. You know, I was in an awful way, but I was very depressed. Of course I was. I was in such a bad way. I wouldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't even go to the shop. I felt so stuck in the house. And then I suppose I had this battle where, you know, the people around me were so supportive, my boyfriend, my parents, and you really want to get on with it for them, but I couldn't even get that far. You know, the first time around I was getting on with it for them and I was worrying about them. This was just, I was so bad and I was so deep in it that I was just in this
caught up in it, like fully.
I was numb. I was just...
Did you know anybody else that had that condition?
No one.
So it's a very isolating condition then as well, like, because nobody can relate, and it's grand for them to say, oh look, sure, you're grand and we'll help you, but you're on your own as well. Like,
that's why I started an Instagram page, is because I wanted a girl, you know, who had I knew no one, and even all the doctors I went to, sure, like, they talk to me and I look back at them and I'd say, but sure, this fella doesn't have a clue what, do you know what I mean, how I feel, you know, that's just kind of, you know, how I was. But I suppose after time I met people with alopecia and that then opened everything for me. But my mental health,
I know what I'm thinking about there now when you said you met people with alopecia. I was thinking of Alopecia Anonymous.
Good one,
that's a good idea.
But you know, you said alopecia, the various forms of alopecia, or types of alopecia. You could do a podcast alone, but can you give us an overview of what the different types are and what your one is?
Yeah, so I have alopecia areata, so I have some hair. I lost eyelashes before I lost eyebrows. I have most of my eyebrows. I have my eyelashes. I unfortunately have my body hair because I pay a fortune to get my laser done for my body hair, and then I no hair on my head. I'd rather it the other way around. But anyway, but so my alopecia areata is a bit bitty, but even that splits into different types. There's alopecia totalis, complete hair loss, alopecia universalis. There's traction alopecia. If somebody, a lot of coloured women would have it from weaving their hair. It's traction, it's pulling, or if girls wear, you know, loads of extension for years, it'll keep pulling out the hair and eventually the hair won't grow back there.
So alopecia is not always autoimmune.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. There's another type of hair loss, telogen effluvium, which is stress related, which can be quite traumatic because someone's going through a stressful situation anyway, but telogen effluvium normally is just where the follicle goes to sleep and comes back, you know, so that's not too bad. There's loads of different, there is a name on it, we don't know the name. There's alopecia of just the beard area for men.
That'd be handy, wouldn't it? Definitely. I want that one, the scruffy head today.
I've often heard of people's hair colour just going a different overnight from just.
I know somebody that had alopecia and it grew back grey.
Yeah.
They were young men, like.
So it can, like, it's very common for it to grow back either really dark, really grey, or really curly. So it's funny, you know, mine grew back, the hair that I do have, because I went from having about 15% of my hair to I now have about 45% of my hair, and it grew back jet black. I was always brown, but it's really, really dark, so I was lucky I didn't get a full head of grey hair, I suppose. There's a positive.
I know, it's like I was saying to you off camera, my brother Keith, I hope you don't mind me saying actually.
No.
But he hardly hides it, like, he had alopecia, I think he was about 15 to me.
Yeah, jeez.
He's Timmy's age, like they would have been in the same class and stuff.
He'll definitely kill us anyway for talking about this thing. But you know, when we were growing up, we really didn't understand what was going on for Keith. You know, and Keith was probably struggling himself. He was losing his hair, and you can understand how it is like. But like when you're a child, like you're trying to figure out what kind of nickname to give him, and
I know
all this different stuff. You know, but it's not till you really sit back and you think about how someone's feeling. When you know you can really, but I
remember he was boxing in the All-Ireland final. Then I think he was about 15, and because his hair was patches, you know.
Yeah.
So when he was boxing in the All-Irelands, then all his friends had shaved their underside of their heads. You know what I mean? So they all had the same haircuts up in Dublin, which was good. Like, but I couldn't imagine him with it grows back in patches that he shaves. He looks completely bald. But there is patches which you wouldn't need to grow because it's not aesthetic. It's not, you wouldn't like. Is yours patches like that too?
No, mine is actually all. I used to say to people, I have like a Conor McGregor when he had the bun. So I've like all hair on top here, but I've nothing, we'll say, behind my ears or anything at the back. So it's like a bit of an undercut, really.
How long will it grow? Does it grow to a certain degree?
Oh no, it'll grow. I cut it. I actually cut my bio hair. Yeah. It's
what you call it?
My bio hair.
Bio hair.
Yeah.
That's a new word. I never heard that.
That's my natural hair.
Do you know
There's like so many different hairs now. I have to differentiate.
You know what's very common these days as well is people going bald men.
Yeah.
They're going off, say for instance, and getting implants and stuff
hair
like
transplants,
that. It's not something you can get. No, I'm very naive when it comes to this topic. It's not something you can do with alopecia or anything like that.
It's good to ask these questions because people, you know, have these questions. It's something I've looked into, but it's not, because at the end of the day they still need a follicle as a home. So my follicles are live and they're active, but for some reason they're cutting off the hair. So if you put even a foreign hair or any hair into it, it's going to cut it off just like it does my own. But the bald men, that's a big thing.
Yeah, there's
transplants.
And I seen them being botched as well, fellas. You know, people going to Turkey getting hair transplants and the head getting infected and everything.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know, when your hair was falling out, did you have all these mad notions of how you were going to counteract it, or did you accept it?
Oh God, no, I didn't accept it at all.
Like, were you looking at medications, alternative remedies, and what they were doing?
Oh my God, I had to have a list every day. If I stopped trying to research it and trying to find a cure or find something that was going to help, then I'd say I would have went off my game. It was only when I started looking into that stuff that kept me going. Going back to the December that I wouldn't leave the house, I went up to Dublin and I got a wig in the January, which gave me another very difficult month, I think. So I kind of went up thinking that I'd get it and it would be temporary and, you know, I'd look normal. And next thing I came home and I had this wig on and I thought I looked ridiculous. You know, I had this big thick head of hair. I had thin hair from it falling out for the last year, and then I had this big huge thick head of hair. And it gave me a bit of an identity crisis. So I was starting a whole other struggle here where I'd look in the mirror and I'd have no wig on and I'd say I couldn't recognise myself. And then I'd put on the wig and I'd put on makeup and I'd say, right, I'll be fine now. Couldn't recognise her either. I was like, sure, that's not me either. Yeah. Neither looked like me. And it was just this really strange limbo I lived in for about a month. But after that, things got better. And it is my fault I didn't go for a wig sooner. I needed a wig much earlier than that, and it would have helped me. And I do say that to people who were struggling and losing their hair. Don't wait until you're locked in the house then and you can't go anywhere. You know what I mean? That's too late. You know, you're going to start a whole other battle then with it. I found I could have went sooner. That was one really big mistake I made. I should have went and got one sooner, and then the whole struggle I was in, it would have tied in, whereas I had just become to the phase where I was coming out of what I was going through, and then I went and got a wig, and then I went through all this, and you know, I did make it worse for myself, I think. So that is one thing I always say to people, you know, don't leave it too long, and make sure you kind of go.
That's a wig, obviously.
Yeah, that's a wig.
Do you have to take it off and stuff, going to bed and shower and things like that?
Yeah, you
is
do.
It looks like, it doesn't look like a wig. It looks like.
Doesn't it?
No, it looks like
it's coming out of your scalp.
Good. It's a good wig. So,
it is.
Yeah, you have to take them off to do it. Like, to be honest, when I go in the door home, I take mine off. And it's terrible because if you call to my house, it could be, if I'm not running upstairs, I'm running into the kitchen or something, it could be hanging on the end of the banister. So like often the postman or someone would call and I'd be like, whoa, you know, the wig is hanging off the banister behind me. But
No, that reminds me of years ago. No, I was in Cork prison. I was a young fella, and I was in with Jason from Cullen. I won't say second name. He'd no teeth. He'd false teeth, and you know, at 7 o'clock you have to go out your last time out, a cup of tea and brush your teeth, whatever. So next we were watching the telly. Here's the officer at the door. Jason, you left your teeth down in the toilet on the sink.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, you just leaving your wigs, you know, and you're forgetting about it.
Are you confident these days?
I am now, yeah. I'm 100%.
So you have no problem wearing without the wig? Like being
going out without the wig?
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that though, would you?
I do it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not 100% comfortable with that at all. Just because I wear a sort of a bandana going around my head to hide the patches, because it looks fine, but if the wind blows, you're gonna, you know, and someone's gonna go, whoa. So I'm not 100%, and the only reason is because I wear a sort of a bandana, and that then causes a whole uncomfortable thing because I'm constantly fixing it, it's constantly slipping. So sometimes it's just easier to put on the wig. Like, I look fine head on with no wig. It looks absolutely fine. But when I start to turn, all the bald patches are noticeable.
I've seen your pictures. I've seen it, and I thought you looked fabulous, you know. And even your friend that told us about yourself, she said you looked absolutely beautiful, like, you know. And we looked at the photographs, and you looked perfect. You know, it was like, remember years ago. My wife was she was into this girl, and she read her book. Her name was Jade Goody. She died of cancer, and she went completely.
She was in, wasn't it?
She went completely bald as well.
Yeah.
And I thought she looked absolutely.
I was just gonna say
completely natural. I thought it was.
She was actually beautiful bald.
Yeah.
I watched that documentary. I would have been quite young, but I remember watching that documentary.
That was very sad.
So sad. She was actually beautiful bald.
She was.
She had such beautiful facial features. She was gorgeous. Yeah. But I was only talking to my friend's mum recently, and I was with her, and she was saying, you know, take off the wig there, and I've no problem taking it off. Sure, I take it off on social media all the time, and she was like, there you are, there's the Chloe I know. Do you know, it's funny how people associate me, because I suppose my hair is dark. It's so different, you know, the contrast. I kept with the blonde in the wigs because I was blonde. I chose to be blonde before my hair fell out, and it's just kind of a little.
Are wigs expensive? Are they expensive to maintain? Is it cost effective for you to have alopecia?
Absolutely not. I'd be better off if I was getting my highlights done every 4 weeks.
Really?
It's so expensive. Yeah. And this is it is in Ireland, but this is what worries me about young girls going to get wigs and stuff, is they are so expensive. Like, you're talking, a wig in Ireland could be anywhere between a human hair wig, so this is human hair, not to freak you out.
What do people, is there like hair banks?
Yeah, there's two types. You've synthetic and you've human hair. So the synthetic are made of a type of reinforced fibre plastic, so they kind of look like what they are, or then you get human hair, which looks nice and dry and has split ends and, the stuff you want.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the hair comes from India, Spain, Russian, Brazilian. They're kind of the main ones. I don't know how they get the hair, whose hair. I've never looked into it. That's not like me, but I just don't want to know. But it's really, really expensive here in Ireland. So like, you're talking about 1,000 to 3,000 euros for a human hair wig. And what I didn't realise when I first bought one was they don't last forever.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I thought you get one wig, you spend a fortune on it, and that's it. But like, if you wear your wig every single day, all day, like, and you maintained it really well, you'd be very lucky if you got 6 to 9 months out of it.
Really?
If you're wearing it constantly. That's a very short space of time.
€100 a month, really, isn't it?
I wondered, is there, for people that have health insurance?
So there are different things. So you can, if you have health insurance, they won't cover it unless you've cancer, which is an issue in itself.
It's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah. So like, I've health insurance all my life. My parents have always paid for very expensive health insurance for me. Never had to claim anything.
Touch wood.
Thank you. Yeah. And
except for when you needed it, then you weren't covered.
And the one time I needed it, then.
What about medical card?
Medical card, you can get a grant depending on where you live. I'm going to say the approximate grant is in and around €500. That's not really going to get you anywhere.
It takes about 2 years then to get it.
Yeah, and then you have to wait before you're entitled to, get another one. You can claim back 20% if you're paying tax on your health expenses, which is something. And but like, I get all my wigs really from the UK, where they're so much cheaper. But it's awful. Like, so I can get a human hair wig that's custom made to me, custom fit to my head in the UK for about £500 or £600. I can pick the colour of every strand. I can really customise it. Whereas if you walk in somewhere here, you only have what's there. If you're lucky, some places will only give you a magazine that you have to pick it out of. And I mean, even if you have the medical card grant, you're still looking at probably €1,500, €1,000.
It's very expensive, isn't it?
They're so expensive.
How do you maintain it then? Like, can you kind of start? If I sound stupid, like, but do you wash it with shampoo or do you wash your hand wash it? Can you put go-go's in it and scrunchies and all these things?
You're just after.
These are the questions people are going to be thinking of.
And it's the questions I get all the time. They're a pain to maintain, really, to be honest. You have to be really, really careful with them, because the biggest thing about wigs is that they shed. They actually end up balding, and that's why you can't wear them, because all that's left then is a net. So like, washing them, and you'd normally scrub your own hair, whereas I have to like pet it, and then I have to leave it, in conditioner, and then I put it in a plastic bag and I leave it there for half an hour to try and condition it. And it's very I sort of became a hairdresser overnight. I had to learn about all different types of shampoos and products, and like, I would have always went into the supermarket and picked up whatever to shampoo my hair with. Now I have to get all the top of the range expensive shampoo. Do you know what I mean? It's very ironic that way. But they're hard to maintain. Now I found, actually, and I probably do have to compile a list for people. There's loads of hairdressers around that are actually comfortable with wigs. So there's a great place, Chair, in town on sort of George's Quay. I used to work around the corner from her, and her name is Paula, and she's mental, and she's well used to working with wigs. And I could drop it into her, and she'd wash it and blow dry it for me, and I could pick it up then the next day.
That's handy, isn't it?
Yeah, but of course then with COVID.
Have you got another wig on standby then?
Oh, I've about 40 wigs.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on my mood.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's great because now I've loads. I swap them round so I get longer out of them. Yeah. I'm not wearing the one wig every single day. You know, I wear the same wig to work all the time because everyone knows, you know, obviously about my situation. I'm very open about it, but I don't want to shove it in people's faces either. And, you know, I'm in construction, so there's a lot of men around, and I don't want them to say, Jesus, you know, like often there I could wear something slightly different, maybe slightly blonder, nothing drastic, and you know, I might get a comment, oh, did you get the hair done? And I'm like, do I go into the conversation now with him? And he would probably absolutely die. Or do I just say, yeah, I did, yeah. Do you know what I mean? So with work in some situations, I'll wear the same one all the time.
I could definitely understand where you're coming from there, because, you know, construction men, like, you might act all brave in their little group, whatever. The whistle, the wolf whistle and whatever. Yeah. But when they're on their own, then they're like, there's... You know, but Jesus, trying to get into conversations with like about something like that, we'd
I know.
You know, but before we move on, do you know, since you started your Instagram page, you know, and you talk about your own story and everything else, has there been many women contact you looking for advice? You know, because with you already after going through the experience of it, you know so much, and you're able to pass so much information and where to go when they need certain wigs, or good doctors that are around, or what shampoos, you know all these things are very, very important.
So it's funny because with social media you have to keep it interesting, and I'm harping on about the same story all the time, you know what I mean? So I have to do these reels and these fun things and keep the activity going and keep the interest going. And I always say to my boyfriend, he's always like mocking me, and he's like, hi guys, you know, pretending I'm a vlogger and all this, but I'm like, it's actually what happens behind my page. You know, I've 5,000 and something followers, but it's nothing in comparison to the messages I get. It's really funny, like what you see on my page, there's actually a whole other side to it. So like on average I could get I could get 5 messages a day, or I could get 15 messages a day. Like that's a lot of messages. And it's a lot of messages to start to have a deep conversation with someone, a very important conversation where you know every single thing you tell them is going to be gospel to them, because I've been in that situation, you know. But the messages flow, like there's a serious amount of messages, and you know, it could be anything from I'm struggling with my relationship because I'm afraid my partner doesn't want to be with me, to I don't want to buy a wig. You know, it could be anything, and it's lovely in a way where we're back and forth. And I always say to people, will you please let me know how you get on, or keep in touch? And they're probably like, oh yeah, but I genuinely mean it. And half of them will come back to me and say, Chloe, look, I bought this, you said buy this wig, or Chloe, look, I use this shampoo. And the messages I get, it just makes the whole thing worth it. You know, I've made lovely friends. I made this one woman, she was going through chemotherapy, she's up in Dublin, and this happens now all the time. And she was like, I've no idea what wig to get and all this. And then I was like, right, where are you living? I suss where someone's living. You know, I'm in all these massive alopecia groups. So I'd say, right, girls, there's a woman living in Dundalk. Can any of you recommend? There's a woman living in Leash. You know, this sort of thing. And I can bounce it off other people and come back with the right information. So I sent her on her path anyway to get this wig, and she'd bought a second one, actually, a synthetic one, just kind of a fashion one that I had actually put up on my page. And she'd gone to that vendor then in the UK, and she just bought a cheaper one, and she loved it. And she's sending me pictures now all the time, and she's like in her wig. And she said to me, and I loved this about her, is she was going for chemo every Friday. And she said that she'd sit down while she's getting her chemotherapy because no one could go in with her through COVID. And she'd buy a new outfit online and, you know, all this. And the next thing, she'd send me a picture of the Friday morning for chemo. She'd be like, wig ready. She'd have her new outfit on. She used to dress up for chemo. And she'd come in and the nurses would be like, oh, you're fab. But like people like that, like she stays in contact with me. She sends me loads of pictures. And like she didn't know where to begin, you know. And there's lots of people in that situation.
What's her name?
Anne.
Say hi Anne.
Hi, Anne.
Hi,
Anne
Anne.
Wong.
Sending
Hi,
you lovely healing energy and positivity from Cork.
I just love
That's
that.
like listening to that's so inspirational. It's so insightful, like, because some people can feel really isolated, you know, because of it's like the addict again, like, you know, not knowing that there's other people that are going through
Yeah.
a similar situation than you until you actually walk into an AA or an NA meeting. What you're doing is like RNA or
Yeah.
A, you
a
know,
support
you're
fellowship,
creating
like.
a little social group where everybody that contacts you that's going through similar to yourself understands that, do you know what, this is okay. I'm
Yeah.
not the only person going through this, you know.
Yeah.
And Chloe is telling me this, and Anne is telling me this one, and you know, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay because we live in a time, right? And this is very important, where not just women and men, but it's getting younger as well. The age is getting younger that we have to look a certain way, you know. And if we don't look that certain way, we mightn't be accepted by society, or our peers, or the people that are in our social groups. So it's very, very important that we
Like,
have
that's-
people like you.
That's what my whole mental health struggle was about, was that what's, you know, defined as beautiful in our society. You know, like, nothing says beautiful like luscious, thick, long hair in the majority of cultures, you know, and
Pocahontas. And,
you know, and for that to grow up, I was born in 1993, so I grew up in this big, huge beauty industry is booming. To then lose my hair, sure, I was like, I'm horrendous. I'm horrific looking. Like, I'd never seen anyone with hair loss. I thought I looked absolutely horrific, and it's all because of what was implanted in me through, you know, beauty standards.
Is there any models that have alopecia?
There is as the page is growing and stuff, I'm finding all these people, but there was a girl years ago on America's Next Top Model that I only know of now that I didn't know back then, Jenna Turner. There's a lot in America. I'm trying to think.
But in that whole industry, they're trying to make it more diverse, I think.
Yes.
Did I see Gucci recently? They have a model, she has Down syndrome.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
which
I
is-
see that in
you
telly
see
as
that,
well,
which
that's
is
lovely.
fabulous, because they should be represented too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I seen there's another very famous model. I don't know her name, but she has a pigmented skin. It's like
Yes.
she's black
She's
but kind of white
beautiful,
blotches.
Yeah. She's very famous.
So
now.
unique.
Yeah.
She's so famous.
And
now,
she's
but
stunning.
She's so unique, but
Yeah.
she is like that. Like what?
Yeah.
Who gets to say what is beautiful?
Exactly.
And that is beautiful.
Yeah.
That little girl
Yeah.
with Down syndrome is beautiful.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
And even going back to what you were saying, even like, and this is both for men and women, the clothing models, you know, they're not your skinny size 6s and 8s anymore. They're women that are, they're
Yes.
not going to say very heavy, but they have a bit
Yeah.
of meat in their bones, let's say.
More normal,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
You know, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not putting as much pressure on people and women and on men and kids, you know, to look a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, because when we put a portrayal that you have to look a certain way, you know, we tend to forget that it's actually our own kids that are coming up. We're doing the damage to.
Yeah,
You know, so
it is very damaging. It is, you know, you're bred into this psychological, you know, thing, and it is all society. And the worst thing is we're all to blame. You know, it's not all them out there to blame. It's us as a whole society. You know, but like it's the definition of beauty standards. It is changing, though. It is. I do think it is changing.
Do you know when you were talking about your Instagram and the interactions that you'd have behind the scenes? I say, thinking about our own. Do you know, like our Instagram is like a byproduct, really. Do you know, because we set up the YouTube channel first and foremost. Then it was Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's just the way to share. Our social media just became so busy that we had to close. Not we had to. Myself and Timmy are working full time. I'm doing a PhD on the side. Timmy's starting up his own business. We tried to squeeze the podcast in, you know. It can be very overwhelming dealing with all the messages. Now, it's grand to get the messages, don't get me wrong. So a lot of the stuff though would be, we're not a search engine, let's just say that. So I closed the Facebook messages. closed the Twitter. Instagram is still opened, but we try channel people through to the email, because it takes effort to open up the email.
Yes.
And normally you're going to get the messages that are substantial. We have a marketing team of students that are helping us at the moment, and they ask for our login details for the social medias to check the analytics and all this stuff, but I wouldn't give them the password for the Instagram, not because I didn't trust them, but ethically people share very, very personal stuff with us.
Yes.
And I'm sure you get the same.
Yes.
Their warts and all, like they'll bare their soul to me and Timmy, because they see me and Timmy doing it week in, week out, and they feel that there's no judgment there, which there isn't. They're the messages that mean something to us, and they're the messages that will always get a reply. And if you don't get a reply, it's not that we don't value your input. We do, and I'm sure you do. But it can get overwhelming, can't it?
Oh, it can.
But you'd feel a first connection though with the people that contact you as well, though.
Yeah, I kind of get a bit of a buzz off it, because I get the excitement that I was the girl who would have loved to have messaged someone and even just get a reply to say, it didn't even have to be advice, but I was like, I can give them what I was craving so badly. I can give that person that, and that gives me a buzz. And I really don't mind it. I am constantly replying to messages, but I will always make sure I get back to all messages. If you got a message and you didn't get a reply.
I know, you have to say
I
that
do
too.
think I've gotten back to all messages.
But sometimes they come in so much that if you don't reply there and then, it will get lost. So
a big thing I have as well is, I could have 5 girls called Jen write to me at the same time. And I'm writing paragraphs and trying to get it all in. So they're taking their time and writing a paragraph back, because a lot of the time it could start off like, I'm losing my hair, can you suggest something? And sure, I go in straight away with them with a list of questions. Right, how much hair are you losing? What are you doing about it? Have you tried this? I start straight away. So it tends then, by the time they get back to me, I don't know which Jen it is, so I actually have to go back to the start and read the essay of messages to be able to reply. And then I'd say, oh, you told me that you had da-da-da. You know what I mean? So I'm almost doubling and tripling up my work.
I tell you what we did, because we run into the same issues. A lot of the questions are the same questions. What kind of books you're reading, what meditations do Timmy use, what courses did James do, this type of stuff. We have we updated, we didn't update the website, but we're getting the website updated at the moment. But we did an FAQ, frequently asked questions, and it's like, in the first instance, refer to this, and if this doesn't answer your question, then come to us. So I think that might be helpful for you, and might answer a lot of the queries, and then you might get the proper good questions then after that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but look, if you're happy to answer messages, we might give you a bit of a gig there on the Norries admin.
Yeah, he's serious.
I know.
It takes me probably 45 minutes to reply to an email, because with me being dyslexic, I'm constantly going over the sentence, and I might change the sentence 4 times. That's one sentence, and that's the truth. Because my structure, how I structure stuff, it can be so different. The first time, the second, the third time, and then I'll have to say it to myself out loud, and then Jesus, fuck it, and then I'll probably change it again.
Do you know what we need?
That's the truth.
We need an admin. We actually need an admin. Somebody that you trust as well. Yeah. Because people, when they're emailing me and Timmy, they're not emailing an admin. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And they mightn't divulge anything if it wasn't for me and Timmy. So that's why we're slow. People have offered to help, but very slow to let people see other people's messages.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And a lot of the messages, they're like, as James said earlier, a lot of people are really opening up to you, and when I connect when I look at the email and James does the other stuff, and and when I see the emails, and and we're doing a bit of an empathy at the moment for a book, myself and James, for someone else, and when I have the same experiences of them, and I've empathy, I could be fucking there on the email for an hour.
Yeah.
Literally, I could be there trying to they get the right words into my head so I can get them down on this bit of paper, and you know, it's like it's the most important thing in that moment for me is to make sure that I'm giving this person the best information that I could possibly give them, and that they might understand in my kind of vocabulary as well, you know. So it's you try to help everybody, and as you do,
it's very
really
personal,
do.
like, isn't it? It becomes very personal to you, you know. And that is a major thing.
If people want to contact you, how can they do it?
Instagram.
What's your
Chloe's
handle?
Hair Affair.
Say that again.
Chloe's Hair Affair.
Great name, actually.
My friend came up with that.
so that's Chloe and then Hair Affair.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah, on Instagram, and that's kind of the main portal. I mean, if I've often given out my number to people who really, really need it, but you know, Instagram
that's the first protocol anyway.
Yeah,
is the
always Instagram. Yeah.
And if people aren't on Instagram, they can contact us and we can link you in with them.
Exactly.
I set
up a Facebook page in conjunction with the Instagram for people to let them know, you know, that you don't have to be on Instagram, but I rarely check it, and it mirror posts what's on my Instagram. Now I do check it, and nothing really comes into it anyway, because I have clearly marked, you know, and I'd often actually get you know, hi, my mom's losing her hair. She said to contact you on Instagram, you know, so I do think a big, huge thing with me is word of mouth. You know, my mom, you know, anyone would have no problem saying, oh, my daughter's losing her hair. And someone might say, God, my friend's daughter's losing her hair, or her son, or, you know, and that's a big way as well to get people to connect to me. So that's another big thing.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much, Chloe.
It was very interesting, thought-provoking, and something that we don't hear about all that often.
Yes.
So thanks for coming on. Continued success in your Instagram and your professional and personal life, and we stay in touch.
Of course.
So thank you. Thanks, Timmy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Robin. And we see you all next week.